Well, good morning for some of you, afternoon for most of you on the East Coast, the day after July 4th weekend, and in Canada, July 1st, which is all of us celebrating our independence and the wonder of living in a, for the most part, open and free society. So I hope you had a great celebration and you're now sort of ready to focus your energy and your efforts back to the task at hand, which is building a glorious business that will enable you to experience that level of freedom on a daily basis. And I'm very blessed and very fortunate to have been one of the NICAN pioneers in Canada, particularly, and in helping to get NICAN on the map and in turn experiencing the kind of freedom that this business can afford us. And so one of the things that happened, by the way, I'm speaking today on behalf of Ben. Whoa. Okay. So I'm going to have to mute all, monitor that. So if you're just joining us and are unmuted, please mute yourself. Ben is in transit, and more to come on that news front. But he is in transit and was planning on being on this call this morning. We had gone over this agenda of what we were going to cover, and unfortunately, last night he informed me that he wasn't going to be able to make the time slot. So I'm standing in on his behalf, and I was going to co-share this anyway with him because it's mainly the subject material I'm most familiar with. So today's discussion of leadership pertains to our plan and our original plan, and subsequently how this plan has evolved concerning the live agenda, the online live agenda, which we refer to as the rhythm of the business. And because there's been so much dialogue about this and changes as well within the context of that, we felt it was important to readdress the whole concept as to what was the original intention behind its development, what has happened since, where is the information accessible, how to leverage that information, and how it's evolved, and how some of you within the leadership ranks who have assumed roles as hosts, how you have actually benefited from it and participated in it, and how it's being handled by some of you. So we wanted to bring those highlights because we felt it was very, very relevant, especially at this time as we're seeking to gain momentum. So I thought I would share a few thoughts from a document that I actually had that Ben originally sent to me when he and I were first discussing the concept of this online agenda. I and Ben, for the most part, being the main architects of this agenda. So I wanted to read to you what the point of this online schedule is. It's not just one event. It's a series of events that happen in succession that is designed to move somebody through their mindset from first exploring the idea of being involved in NICAN as a customer to moving them all the way through to really launching their business in a serious way under the tutelage of a mentor, being mentored by someone. So to go from someone who knows absolutely nothing about NICAN to being mentored into a launch campaign to get their business off the ground, that's a process. It's not an event. It's not a day. And it's a process of information as it unfolds. And sometimes they need to see the information more than once. But the idea is to clearly identify the process, because our business is based on our ability to conscientiously duplicate our efforts through the efforts of others, which means we need a system. We need to understand that system. We need to utilize that system, leverage it, and teach it. And if we can't identify the components of that system, either through oversimplification or making it too complicated, then what we don't have is a system. And it's hard to follow something when you're not aware of what it is. So it's important for us to readdress this issue and give you the highlights again of why the online agenda came about and so forth. First and foremost, the goal was to get them in, get them going, get them aligned, and get them launched. Those are the four key components of the online agenda as we have it right now. Get them in, get them going, get them aligned, and get them launched. Then we added the other component, which was the ongoing mentoring, the ongoing dialogue to help those who are involved in Nikken to stay prescient of what's going on, what's new information, what's new strategies for team building, etc. So we started to add the leadership and mentoring component to this agenda. But for the most part, it's to get them in, get them going, get them aligned, and get them launched. Now, let me just define what that means. The idea of get them in is obviously to introduce them into Nikken, both the products and the opportunity. To get them going is to give them some fundamentals so that they can get their business started, like just the simple things like how to place an order and how to maybe open the dialogue of conversation to acquiring a customer. Just the simplest of things, because at this moment in time in the mindset of a new consultant, it's a lot of moving parts in Nikken, and they've heard a bunch of stuff and they're not quite sure how to put all those pieces into a container so that they can actually become functional. So we've got to break them in slowly into that dialogue and download some competencies that they can then translate into activity, which is going to produce results. Get them aligned. That call is designed on Monday for the newest person on the team. The idea is now that they're sort of getting the baby steps going, we want to integrate them into the bigger picture, the bigger Nikken family. Meaning, what is the Nikken family? How do they fit into it? What is the culture of Nikken? What are the key components of what makes Nikken business successful? So we feature and highlight things like, the Entrepreneur Club, things like Nikken Reward Points, things like the main events, and so forth. These are the highlights of things that should be on their radar. So we strip it down to the fundamentals of what they need to know so they can become integrated from being a lone member to a team member. That's that transition from being involved in Nikken as a person getting their business started to a person who's part of an organization, part of an ongoing concern, part of a movement, part of a rhythm. And so that's what that alignment call is designed to do. And then get them launched. Getting them launched is very different than getting them going. As you know, most people sort of do the little bit of contact here and there, and what I refer to as the onesies and twosies. But getting them launched really means a focused effort. It really means focusing on an agenda. And to do that, you really need help. That's where the upline comes in. That's where strategy comes in. That's where setting targets like the Entrepreneurs Club comes in, driving for silver, etc. Somebody needs to know what's going on. And that's generally somebody who's done it before. So that's the upline or the mentor who gets involved in assisting this person to do a proper 90-day launch of their business. Very different than just simply, I'm talking to people, I'm inviting them to events. So that's sort of the process as we move somebody through from just learning about Nikken to really getting full engagement in their business and in setting and achieving goals. So the reason why the rhythm was set up the way it was set up to give people that backbone, to be able to move people through a process of information. So the events are designed to move people through a process. There are multiple events in certain categories. For instance, product, to introduce somebody to the product, to get the dialogue started. That conversation happens more than one time on the Nikken calendar in the week. And the business opportunity happens more than one time, but particularly the product. Many more times do we have an opportunity to introduce somebody to the first conversation in this process to get that process started. Now, there's been debate as to whether or not there's too many events. And I kind of chuckle every time I hear that because I wonder where that question is actually coming from. They're not really thinking from the customer's point of view. They're just thinking from, oh my God, there's so many events I have to attend. No, you don't have to attend. This structure is in place for you to leverage, which means to utilize where and when possible and as often as possible, clearly. And so I'll give you an example of this. Back in the day, when we were doing live Nikken meetings, particularly in the area of Toronto or anywhere for that matter, we had a weekly schedule, and sometimes we had more than one event per week happening to introduce people to Nikken. As the numbers start diminishing in a wellness preview, typically the host of that presentation says, we don't have enough people, so let's just do one every 2 weeks. So they pull back on the rhythm. And then when the numbers continue to plummet, they then say, well, you know what, there's not enough people to support one event every 2 weeks, we'll do it once a month. So again, they pull out the rhythm. And so now they're prospecting event, their first exposure event, is only once a month. And of course, you know what happens next. What happens next is they shut down the meeting. So they did not address the core issue. They addressed the symptom. The symptom was lower attendance. That's not the core issue. The core issue is, why is there lower attendance? What is it that feeds the event? It's not the event that feeds the event. And so it doesn't matter how many events you have. It's not the event that feeds the event. It's the initial contact and invite by the newest kids on the block and the people who are building their business to expand their business. That's what feeds the event. It's that initial contact invite. I'd like to just share my screen here for a second and show you what I'm talking about here. If we have I'm guessing you can all see what I'm looking at, the rhythm of the business, the support structure. If we have something as simple as the wind blowing, but with a certain regularity, with a certain frequency, you can actually cause a bridge to fall. And that's happened many times. We call that the resonant frequency. In other words, the structure has a frequency upon which the amplitude increases to a point where, in this case, the structure fails. But think of a swing, an easier way of looking at it. You know, when you're pushing somebody on a swing, you have to do it with a certain rhythm. And if you don't match that rhythm properly, then, you know, you're not going to get anywhere. And so to get higher up in that swing, to increase that amplitude, and then the Nikan equivalent, that would be to increase the excitement, increase the frequency, or the number of people involved, etc. The increase is from the regularity, the frequency being regular. And also in this case, we can look at it two ways. You can have an oscillating structure. So let's say I had the same presentation. Let's say the presentation was simply a Nikan product presentation. And I did that every day. And I invited the same person to that presentation every day. Well, that's a rocking chair. That's an oscillating system. There's something happening, but nobody's getting anywhere. It's not moving forward. It's not going anywhere. So a correct system, a correct structure is going to cause movement forward. So every time you pump that event, every time you have an event, it causes movement. And so the rhythm of the schedule and how the schedule is designed is to cause that type of movement. Let me share with you where you can find the Nikan schedule online. If I can figure out where I put it. It's somewhere here. Okay. Desktop. Excuse me 1 second while I reconfigure so I can actually show you what I'm looking for. There we go. And that's what I wanted. Okay. So you can go to the Royal Alliance and look at the schedule. Here it is. So if you go to royalalliance.com, theroyalalliance.com, there's a bunch of links there that give you access to this information. So if you want to go on the Royal Alliance live schedule, what we're talking about today, you would just click here and it'll drive you straight in like you did here today, straight into the meeting if you know what time the meeting starts. The RA Nikan Connection, that is the other schedule of events, and I'll just go over that real quick with you. Again, click on that link, boom, it drives you straight into the Zoom meeting. That's for you, for your guests, if you need to copy and paste that link. Our YouTube channel is where everything's housed in terms of meetings that have been recorded. So all of these events, what's been really great about this agenda is that we've been able to accumulate a library of events where if you can't make the live event, you have the recorded event. Again, it's kind of like a 7-Eleven store. You know, you just never know when you need to get that big Slurpee. But you got to be open if you want somebody to come in for that big Slurpee and pick up whatever other supplies they might need. So that's why they have them open every day of the week. If they only had 7-Eleven open once a day, they would go somewhere else for that drink or that alternative. So having more access, more availability is a good thing if you're managing your business correctly. It's not a bad thing. If you feel that you have to attend every event, well, that could be very overwhelming. But if you have a plan for yourself and your business, then you're going to just take where you can what's available and leverage that. And it's important that it's available when you need it and when your prospect needs it. So that's why there's regularity in this schedule. If we go to events over here, we can see the live replays will drive you straight to the YouTube channel for those replay sessions. Or you've got the Nikan Connection and live schedule. So I'm going to switch over to that. this is what you would see if you clicked on that. You'd see the schedule. I'm drawing it to the bottom of the schedule. What you see across the top here is, let me just shrink that a bit. There we go. Contact and invite. This is on the top left-hand side. This, let me put a spotlight on it right here. Contact and invite, that's the first step that makes everything happen. And so ultimately, the most important thing we could be teaching anybody is how to make that contact and invite, how to get that conversation started. We've been hearing a lot about elevator speeches, very important. But when somebody's brand new in the business, you're not going to send them out to the cold market. You're going to ask them to make a list. And it's from that list, they need a good, proper script in order to reach out and contact people on purpose, with an agenda, with the hopes that they can invite those people into an exploration process with them. So having that script, having that training, that experience, and staying close to somebody new is critical for them to have people enter the process. So now when somebody wants to know about NICAN, one of the first things we're going to share with them, as Ben has been referring to, we've got the products, we've got your story, we've got the product story, we've got the business story. So what you have here is your story, you got the product story, you got the business story then. And then, okay, so how do we get going? How do we get started? And then, okay, I want to get a little bit more serious about this. I want you to meet the rest of the team and the rest of the NICAN family and learn more about the bigger picture of what's actually going on in here as a business agenda. That's that one call. And then there's that launch. Let's get your business launched. And then on a weekly basis, we have ongoing leadership calls in this agenda to keep those close to the fire, to learn new things, to remain interested and excited, to keep NICAN top of mind, and to gain more information. So that's how this agenda is put together. And so if you actually look down here, down below, that's the rhythm of events right now. There's also different forms of that rhythm. There's these ones here, the Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. That's sort of a second rhythm. So there's one rhythm that moves people through the process, as we talked about, moving an oscillating or an advancing structure. And then there's another rhythm underneath that is also there to support the development of new consultants and customers. A little bit different. For instance, the call on Mondays with Rick, that's a little bit more advanced for people who are already engaged in NICAN. The calls with Dr. Lindner, those are great introductory calls and follow-up calls. I mainly use them personally to introduce people to the products in a more in-depth way and to create ongoing support and awareness, because as they develop an awareness of the value of the products, they're going to want to purchase. So it's also a way to involve them in a higher awareness of the wellness home construct. And then the Stump the Doc, that's always great for people who are curious about various things. But underneath all of that is the main rhythm of how to move somebody through this process. So what's most important about this call for you today, and why we have it recorded, is just to understand that it's a process of moving people from just learning about NICAN to really getting serious about NICAN. And that process is here for you to leverage, to plug people in, to help move them along. If they're stuck somewhere in this process, get them to the next call that will help them get unstuck and move to the next level of thinking, level of awareness. Now, if we look at the actual schedule of this, this is what it looks like. It's a 3-page PDF you can download. So you've got that to download, and you can even see the actual flow here. The arrows going both ways means it's interchangeable, whether you start with a business or you start with a product preview. They're interchangeable, but this would be kind of the ideal flow. I'm sorry, I meant testimonials. So you might have a product testimonial after a product showcase, and then you take them to a business preview because that makes sense. Or you might have somebody who's had a business preview, and then you follow up with a product testimonial, because at that point in time, that may make sense. So those are interchangeable. But for the most part, this is the process, how to move people through. So if you yourself haven't gone through this in succession, please do. So you are aware of the system that's in place for you to support you. And if you've got brand new babies, get them into the flow of this, because it's going to bring them to a higher level of awareness, and they're going to be able to do much more with their NICAN business. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit more. But there is one more component of this that I want to mention, and it's the actual structure itself. For some of you who have been hosts, you'll understand this. The goal is consistent repetition of the message through this calendar to empower others in the team to take over, step up, and become the next generation of leaders. This is essential for the organization. What does that mean? That means we've created a stage, and it's a principally driven stage, not a personality driven stage. So we're happy for others to step up in those roles as either a product presenter or a business presenter, or even someone want to take over the alignment with success. We're happy to share the space to allow the emergence of leaders. And some of you have actually done that. I want to recognize Randy, who's been a key component for the development of this online agenda and jumping in and staying involved and helping to modify it. I've asked Madeline to jump in here in the last minutes that we have. Maybe I can ask you a few questions, Madeline, because something interesting happened recently that prompted this call and what Ben and I were talking about and sharing enthusiastically about. That was, there was one of our hosts, Bernadette McBurney, who's a diamond, who would be on today's call, but she's on the Team Kaizen call weekend right now. She had the desire to hand the baton, so to speak, of her time slot. So she recognized as the host that she's responsible for that time slot. When she volunteered to own that time slot, it was her preview. She was the one responsible to make it a go. She was the one responsible to have any guests. She was the one responsible to promote it. She was the one responsible to make that event a successful event. And we see it on the calendar, think, great, I've got an event I can put somebody in that I didn't have to put all that energy into. It's just there for my availability, for me to leverage. So I want to thank the hosts who've stepped up and have been very diligent about making their events happen regularly on time, and have been doing a phenomenal job. We've been capturing the best of them, which was the other part of the agenda. We wanted to record these events, so we've been asking them to keep us up to date on what's the best you've got, because then we'll upload that onto the Royal Alliance YouTube channel, so you all have that 24/7. Well, Madeline, something happened recently where Bernadette asked others to volunteer, and you and Michelle Kowalchuk, who's probably listening on this call as well, stepped up and volunteered to take over that time slot. Can you just tell me a little bit about what your motivation is for doing that?
Well, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. I guess what I'd like to begin with, Mike, if I may, you started out by saying that the purpose was to go from intent, to go through the process, to use leverage, to get people involved, to get going, to get aligned, and then we get launched. Well, I have to say, for the experience that I've had, and I see lots of people on here who have been on all these, most of them, maybe 80% of them with me, it was getting Madeline relaunched. And I'll bet that's true for everybody on here. And so the practice, the opportunity to meet other people, and to dovetail it with the I Can series and the Nikan Connect. I've been almost like Molly Chung. I've been telling Molly Chung for years, stop studying, move from your left brain to your right brain. So Florence Nightingale did the same thing here. However, I did the practice. I want to thank Randy Roll for inviting me to be on hers, and Bernadette to fill in for her. So what happened was a decision, breaking through this board. And for anybody that was in Maui, and it says on here, that was February 19th, 2000. It took me one hell of a long time to get to the point of where I am today. Now, am I still a platinum pin level? And I will admit to everybody, a silver pay level. That has been. I feel in my heart of hearts, because of getting to know every one of you, and I'll use Molly Simpson. I'm so impressed with Molly and her daughter, and a couple times I kind of encroached in on her time, wanting to get to know them before Haley, this 18-year-old from her college dorm room, getting married, was doing the business. And I was just so impressed to find out we're both in the same, we're real cousins in the Greg Nelson line. So we have new ABCs, the Brocks, and Hattie Jane. I have to point out Hattie Jane. She was on all of these with this picture of her up there. And so after, when the recording went off, I said, Hattie Jane, you know, who are you? I don't know you. Hattie Jane, since our involvement on here, I'm in Greg's group, she's in the Stoltzfus-Williams line. Hattie Jane has signed a team Kaizen form with me as her mentor. And then filling in for Bernadette, and Michelle Kowalczyk and I have been ABCs to one another for 15 years. And when I got that message from Bernadette, I was so excited to be able to work with Michelle. Yesterday, Michelle and I spent probably an hour and a half on the phone, only learning. We did what we need to be doing with our customers and our prospects. We listened to one another's hearts. And where we are now is absolutely no coincidence on the trajectory of where each of us are on here. And so we're both feeling so excited to be able to co-host. And we brainstormed doing this a little differently, which I've been doing with Randy, with Linda Morris, with bringing Hattie Jane. Gloria is listening, and I want to mention that. Gloria is one of my executives that has been in the Mentor in Me, and now I Can. And through she's been on everything through the little post-conferences. She and Hattie Jane and another one of my less active silvers who hasn't been on here that much yet, that's going to happen. They've started their own 9 a.m. calls. So Hattie Jane took the lead with that. So the duplication is occurring, and I see Bill Cottle's face on here today, and I don't know where Brock's are, but I've said the same thing to Mr. Brock, you know, where are you? Let's see your face. And so what has really happened is a whole new network for me. And Mike, if you remember the first call that we had in that infamous January 16th date when, you know, other people left and here we go, starting over. I said that for years, I didn't have an active upline. Team Diamond was my upline, everybody else was my upline, but then people would go into their own rooms at these events, and Orphan Annie was still sitting out there like getting on this mastermind group, that mastermind group, whatever. What I really see as what has happened by having this practice, not everybody is as talkative as I am, and I reassure you, my goal is to listen more and to facilitate more and to empower more and to move ahead and encourage each and every one here to bring more people. That's Michelle and I. We're going to use that 9:30 p.m. That's my time, Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights, to just be ABCs for one another until there's more of a critical mass coming into that. The other thing that I did is one of my other new terror barriers was this blessed social media. And I have to compliment Reed and Dennis and Peg that got me on through Bo Jabby into using Zoom to practice and have the skills that I have today. And I'm grateful to other mentors that I've had over the years as well. And so now at a reverse raffle, I put a minimum bid down for a social media expert, and I have a consultant there. I've broken through that barrier. So as everybody's always said, and as an educator, I've taught students, nursing students from the LPN to graduate level students. And I've taught hands-on, return demonstration. That's the only way that you can learn nursing practice. So I've taught this, but I think what I want to end my comment, I know what I want to end my comment with is the decision. I have taught decision comes from the two Latin words, decide, to cut, 100% cut to whatever those damn monkeys are in our minds that are keeping us from moving forward. Each and every person that's listening to this today needs to make the decision and practice with real people, get more people onto all of these calls so that they can be live and interactive. And I just feel the past 3 days, this 4th of July weekend was really I sat on my new front porch watching the fireworks. I didn't go down to where they were. I just felt the fireworks going off in me. And I want to thank everybody that's on here. Charlie, I just saw Charlie's face. Charlie and I had such a wonderful discussion.
Madeline, I have to tell you.
Okay, I'm done. I just see so many more. Okay.
I appreciate that. Well, thanks for sharing, Madeline. And I guess what I want to sort of wrap that up into is this has provided a space that wasn't available to everyone, and created a way for you to relate to other colleagues in a different way, in a higher way, a higher awareness way, a more proactive way. And we just get to share in the benefit of that, leverage that, because once upon a time, you had to put a hotel room together, and you had to have people there, and you had to pay for it, and so forth. And the only people who benefited was the people who were actually in attendance in that room. Now we can create the idea, but share it universally across this platform, which is phenomenal. However, like what we don't want is an oscillating structure. We don't want a rocking chair where people keep showing up and nobody's getting anywhere. You need to have an advancing structure, which means you need to keep moving forward through that process. And most important, and to highlight and underscore the main point of what makes the rhythm work is new people entering it. New people entering the rhythm is the only thing that makes it work. And so the focus has to be, and always will be, on contacting and inviting. So that's where the real education comes in. That's where the real hand-holding comes in, those ABCs and so forth. We've got to get more and more people leveraging the system, or the system doesn't do anything. No matter how many wonderful things we have in the system and how we've addressed every issue possible, if people aren't going through it, it's irrelevant. So the focus has to be on expansion, expanding our outreach, getting more out there. And Ben's done a great job on teaching us some of the social media things that he's coming across. And I still am firm on the idea of meeting people and talking with people in person, but leverage what we've got. Leverage the system that's in place for us now, this system called the Nican Rhythm. So I'd like to say thank you for all of you for attending. Madeline, thank you for sharing. Randy and all the hosts who've been doing an amazing job at hosting the Rhythm events. Thank you for doing that. Keep up the good work. We will always be open to changes on the schedule. So if you feel that you want to make an adjustment, you want to add something, you want to subtract something, just share that information with me. I'll make sure that it gets reposted on the agenda online. And so we will have this organic experience of these events as time progresses. And my vision is not to have less events. My vision is to be like 24/7. I turn on the television on satellite TV and I got 400 channels. That's not to my detriment. That's to my benefit, because I'm not going to watch all 400 at the same time. But it's nice to know that I have that many options. And so in terms of our business, you want that. You want a business that can function when you're asleep, that's available for people who are not asleep, and so forth. So think in that mindset, but bring it down to the immediate. And that is, who do you have attending the next event? And that's starting in about 10 minutes. So I want to sign off, say thank you everyone for joining us.